I thought I would say a few words about my early days in New York with Rudi, because that's when all of this for me was born inside. And, I talked recently a little bit about finding out that he had passed away, taken samadhi, and that I really just felt gratitude, mostly, when I learned that. But when I first came to Rudi's 3.5 years before he passed away, I was very, very aware that I had something inside that needed to open up and melt and get me more deeply in contact with some kind of joy and inner power. And I even went so far as to one day, I think it was about 3 weeks before I met Rudi, I was feeling really depressed and miserable and relating to my family history and all that. I was alone in New York City, basically. I've had friends and so on, but I was living alone. And I really got down on my knees and I banged my head on the floor and I said, please, God, help me. I need help. I want to discover something that will give me a different direction. I don't want to repeat all of these karmic things that I've come into this world with and that have developed up to that point. And I was very aware of my sadness for having lost my father. He died when I was 16, and it was pretty traumatic for me. And I had felt a lot of weight on my shoulders from that. And it sort of colored my whole adolescence and early adulthood. And so I had that significant, deep yearning inside. And I'm convinced that it was that yearning that I contacted miraculously through grace that got me in contact with Rudi. I met some woman from England who was visiting, and she had been to Rudi's store and gone to a few of his classes. And she told me about it, and then I said, hey, that sounds very interesting. I would like to go meet him. And then she disappeared. She went back to England, and she never told me where he was. And it wasn't until the next, this was early in the summer, it wasn't until after the summer vacation, after sometime in early September, she came back to New York and she called me and I said, well, can you still set up a meeting? And so she did, and I went in. And it was really quite amazing to meet Rudi. And I had been going to some of Baba Ram Dass's sessions in New York. He had just come back from India, and it was quite nice what he did, and I felt attracted to that. But, it didn't really take with me. So then I went into Rudi's store, and he was sitting there with a young man, and he gave me the intro. And when first I tried to impress him how much I knew about meditation, because, I had read some of the books, and I had been to Baba Ram Dass. So I started telling Rudi, what I thought it was about. And Rudi just looked at me sort of coldly, and he said, you don't know anything about this, which was, for me, wonderful. It just cleared away a whole chunk of false self-identity with a wipe of the hand, or with a few simple words. You wipe that away. And I realized, well, gee, I have to be open. I have to take in under my skin what this is about. He gave me the intro, and he gave me a big hug. And I think I mentioned to you guys before that at that point, some voice from within me came out very strongly and said, look, you are going to be doing this every day for the rest of your life. And I have, and I will. So for me, that was very, very strong introduction. And I went around the corner that same night and had class with Rudi in the meditation room. And even though I had this very strong connection with him, in the beginning when I was sitting in open eyes, I was mostly aware of my own pain and my own kind of the weight of my own situation. And I couldn't really open my heart. I went in and I said, I wish to open my heart. I did all the things that he had instructed me to do. And my heart basically just said, no. Didn't really want to open. But after 3, 4, 5 classes, he taught class at that time a couple of times a week. And one of those might have been the 4th or 5th time, and I was working at it really, really strongly. I was digging into my heart and holding my breath for a long time. Asking, and asking. And gradually, first what happened was, I started to shift my visual experience. My father came and sat there instead of Rudi. Other people came and sat there. Other sort of looking like saints and so on. Whatever that visual thing was, it made me feel, wow, there's something real going on here. I worked then very, very deeply and regularly every night at home. I was a college student at the time, and I also worked part-time. But I worked with a picture of him, and the same things that happened in my open eyes class with him also happened when I had open eyes class with his picture, which was for me kind of incredible. So after a little period of this, I had this magnificent experience in the open eyes class. You walked in there to Rudi's meditation room, which had all kinds of Buddha statues and Oriental art of all kinds. Large room, usually about anywhere from 30 to 60, 70 people were usually present there. And he was very, very strong in his presence. And I kept asking, and I held my breath. I really wanted to have some explosive experience. And that was a self-fulfilling prophecy because, I was sitting in the early days on a folding chair. And all of a sudden, as I take a breath and hold it, my heart exploded in a million tiny pieces. I don't know how else to explain it, but it was like one of these things you see on documentary about outer space where a star explodes or something like that. This is how I felt in my heart. And I was so overwhelmed by the energy flow within myself that I totally fell off the folding chair and probably knocked over a couple behind me. And I just was knocked out on the floor. And this kept happening for several weeks. And finally, Rudi went past on the way out from the program. And he said, well, it's really working for you, isn't it? And I said, oh, yeah, I guess so. One eye was pointing one way and the other another way. The main experience that resulted from that for me was that I became very, very, very centered in this stillness, this feeling of oneness, infinity, however you want to put it. But I realized this is the self. This is who I am. At the core of this great flood of energy and this great breaking up of tension, that led to this flood of energy inside. The core of that was its unlimited space and stillness that I felt as I was lying there. There was not a problem in the world, not a problem in me. Everything was just pure bliss, if you want, oneness. And this went on for quite a while. I had a lot of these kinds of experiences in the beginning. Now, I'm not telling you that so that any of you should start looking for, I have to have that kind of experience. It doesn't have to be like that. It was like that for me because I had a lot of congestion inside that had to break up, and it was my way of getting to the core of my being and to feel that oneness with him. But I also realized, in the 3.5 years that I was with him and in all the time since then, that it's one thing to receive a great energy boost and awakening through contact with a teacher. It's a whole other thing to hold on to that, what you receive, and cultivate it and not be shaken off of it when times are a little difficult. And God knows I had many difficult times after that also. But throughout all of it, I have been very, very consistent in my everyday practice and going back to the very basic, asking, opening, and feeling the contact with that. I can't describe it any other way than as an infinity because it is a total openness. And some of you have had glimpses of it, I know you have. To cultivate that thing of having glimpses of that, into something that is a real immersion in that, something that is the core of your being, the core of your awareness, so that when you're going through whatever you're going through, you always have that basic ground at the core of your being to fall back on. Then it doesn't matter if you're successful in the world, if you're rich or poor or pretty or not so pretty or whatever, becomes very, very secondary. So I wanted to mention that to you because it's really what I'm most grateful for in this life, is the grace that brought me to that possibility. And I loved Rudi a lot, and I still do. And he could ask me just about anything, I think, and I would give it. But it wasn't really his personality or his physical presence or any other type of limited presence. That was the big thing. The big thing was this core of his being that opened up as a contact that I could get awakened through. So in a way, I used Rudi as a way of walking into my own awakening and transformation process. And I wish all of that for you. Now, I'm the one sitting here now, and so you have to work with somebody. You can, of course, work with Rudi's picture, and it has a valuable quality for you. But, there is, somebody asked Rudi once, because there were many other teachers at that time, and he said, well, what about, and also past teachers, and this one guy was asking, what about, I forget even who it was, but somebody who had passed away 100 years ago. How is it to work with that person? And Rudi said, well, it's fine, but there's a huge difference. Dead teachers don't kick ass. And not that I'm such a big ass kicker, but, there is a certain friction and discomfort that you have to feel in contacting this deeper self that is what you really have the potential, the possibility of reaching into through the contact. That's the main purpose. Doesn't matter whether I have green hair or blue eyes or purple lips, whatever, or this or that. It's absolutely irrelevant. It's okay to like or dislike. That's fine, but that's not the main point. All right. Does anybody have anything you want to add or question or complain about? Yes, Devadas.
Swamiji, I don't think you're an ass kicker, but the first thing you did with me was to kick my ass. And it saved my life.
No.
So,
well, that's wonderful. See, I'm not even aware of having kicked your ass, but the energy does that,
You did. No, it was one of the first times you and I talked when we reconnected.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm happy to hear it.